Welcome to the latest edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, who might be dying. What kind of dread disease do you have over there?
I don't know. Here's the good. Let's do glass half full. I once had a TV executive boss tell me my voice was too high and that I should swig whiskey more. I didn't have the heart to tell him I already did that. But this, at least, I've got the deeper voice, got the deep manly voice, cold flu thing. I don't know, John. Maybe I'm allergic to the NBA All-Star game and just the news of it got me. I'm not sure.
It's gravelly. It sounds good. You're fighting through it. It's your flu game. Bad news about being allergic to the All-Star game. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Later in the show, though, we're going to do our Western Conference Midseason Report Cards. Yesterday with Sam Quinn, we did our Eastern Conference Report Cards. So if you missed that, you can find that wherever you get your podcast. And we'll do Team of the Night, as we always do, to wrap up the show. But first, All-Star starters were announced in the Eastern Conference and Western Conference yesterday. In the Eastern Conference, Bill, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, Giannis, and Jason Tatum. You had some discrepancies here. You had an actual vote, and you had two different players in for the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, so I would have had, look, it's close, and you and I have had this conversation on the podcast before. I think there are I don't know, 8 or 9 names that could be on the starting 5 for each conference to be fine. In the East, I had Garland and I had Lillard, as you see there, on my ballot. But, I'm not mad about Brunson. I'm not mad about Mitchell. Both those guys I sort of struggled with, and then obviously went a different direction when I filled out my ballot.
Yeah, you know what? I think between Lillard and Garland and Brunson and Mitchell, they were all super deserving. I think all of them will make it. It was an abomination, as everybody has heard me rant on this show. LaMelo Ball was leading the fan vote. Absolutely ridiculous. He doesn't deserve. I would also put him behind Trae Young. I think Trae Young is a much more deserving all-star than LaMelo Ball. But I think your combination of those two versus the two that actually got voted in as starters, any of those 4 are fine. And I think all 4 are deserving and were the all-stars.
On LaMelo Ball, I'm either a good journalist or a bad podcast teammate or both, because I looked long and hard to try to find any way to put LaMelo on my ballot just to troll you. But the more that I sort of dug into it, the more, look, the fans can vote for who they want, and there is an excitement level to what he does. Like, I know you and I sort of have a difference of opinion here. I love watching him play. You point out correctly that watching him play does not mean watching his teams win, right? So maybe that's part of the star in All-Star. But you're right. Like he didn't deserve it, and it does show a disconnect between what some of the fans want from this event and what some of the other folks who get to contribute, including those of us in the media, want think who we think should represent the players in this thing.
He can be entertaining. I get why some fans, especially young fans, like watching him. He's kind of like a Monster Energy drink. As a basketball player, he's just all over the place at all times. But he reminds me a little bit of Nuke LaLoosh from Bull Durham, right? He's just 1,000 miles an hour and he can't control himself. That can have its utility in terms of entertainment, but in terms of actual basketball this season, there's no way that he should be in there over Darius Garland and Mitchell and Brunson and Dame, and also Trae Young, who I had been previously down on, Bill. If they were going to go to a 5th guard, it would be Trae Young for me, because this year he has really changed the way that he's played basketball. His shot has always been streaky, but this season, Quinn Snyder has really challenged him to be more of a facilitator, and he has been excellent at setting up that team. And I think when we did our Eastern Conference grades yesterday, both Sam and I were pretty high on, a middle of the pack Atlanta Hawks team, just because they've exceeded expectations. And I think a lot of that has to do with Trae Young. So those are the good guards there. I want to run past you here, Bill. Karl Anthony Towns, 5th selection in the front court in the East. First time as an all-star. Giannis, 9th selection. He had the most votes overall. And then Jason Tatum, 6th. Your thoughts on Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson? You get 2 Knicks.
Yeah, look, so part of this too is that there's always going to be an enhanced effect for Knicks and Lakers and probably Celtics, although I guess this Celtics team, that doesn't apply, just in terms of market size and prestige. So the same reason that LaMelo doesn't belong, and the same reason I didn't really consider in a serious way Trae Young, is I do think how your team is doing, how your star power comes to bear on actual success, should matter. And the Cavs are the best team in the Eastern Conference, obviously. So that you're struggling between Mitchell and Garland, at least I was, makes sense. And I'm glad that they got at least one starter. And the Knicks are the most important team in the NBA that haven't won a title in a generation. and they're now the third best team in the Eastern Conference, and they're exciting, and they play this high-octane offensive approach. It's really fun to watch. So I have no issue with it. I thought Lillard was a little bit better than Brunson, and some of that probably is Cat just taking some of the shots and some of the shine, but I have no problem with Jalen Brunson being in. He is, like Donovan Mitchell, one of those guys who I considered, and if this is where it is, and it is where it is, cool, great. I think no wrong answer between probably 4 guards in the East.
100%. And Damian Lillard, by the way, you and I to start the season were a little worried about Lillard and where is he in his career and could he be washed?
Worried.
Not at all washed, having a fantastic season. Let's go to the Western Conference. And by the way, before we do that, we should also remind everybody that 50% of the starters is determined by the fan vote, and then 25% players and media, and then the reserves, which will be announced next Thursday, and we'll be live right here on CBS Sports Network that day. The reserves are determined by the coaches. So that's how all the voting is broken down. In the Western Conference, Bill, we have Steph Curry, his 11th selection. He's a starter again this season after being a reserve. We've got SGA, who is in the MVP conversation, LeBron, KD, and Joker. You have some differences of opinion with these starters as well. You had 2 different guys in the starting lineup that you voted for as opposed to who actually got in.
Yeah, so the guards are exactly how I voted. Look, Durant's been great, especially when he's played. LeBron is amazing. Although LeBron's amazing, but his plus-minus is not amazing, which I know you know. But his actual plus-minus on and off the floor has not been outstanding. I had AD in there. I think AD's been incredible. I think he's been the better Laker. And I had Wemby in there along with Jokic, of course, who's going to be, along with Shea, one of the 2 best players in the game so far. I am perplexed that Victor Wembanyama was not a lock for this, just in terms of how much attention he gets. He is right now, and if the season ended, the defensive player of the year. He has better offensive numbers than some of the guys that just beat him out. I know that he's young. I know that Steph, and I think Steph deserved it, and Durant and LeBron are always going to probably get longer all-star run than they deserve whenever that time comes because of who they are. But it's not as if Victor Wembanyama is some random guy who's having a great season but isn't quite a star. He is the face of the league starting next week, next year, whenever it is. It's a snub, and it's a surprising one too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Wemby is a deserving starter as an all-star, but he's going to make the team, and I think going forward, just pencil him in forever and a day. The problem here, again, as we've mentioned, and you have a little bit of an issue with the voting and how it's determined, as do I, is that 50% of the fan vote is like pretty pushing your thumb down on the scale, right? So you're going to get, as you mentioned, it's going to favor towards the guys like Steph and LeBron and KD. By the way, though, LeBron James, it's a record 21 straight selections, Bill. The last time that he did not make the All-Star game was 2004. Just a little trip down memory lane for you. Tom Brady, at the time in 2004, had just won his 2nd Super Bowl. The Red Sox were still in an 86-year World Series drought. And Michael Phelps had 0 Olympic medals, Bill. That's how long this thing has been going on.
Yeah, it is. Look, I've covered LeBron, and it feels like I was, 40 years younger when I first met the guy. I mean, he has been timeless. And this is the thing. I think sort of like the guards in the East, the front court in the West, LeBron is deserving. Like, I'm not mad LeBron James is a starter. He's having a really nice year. Kevin Durant is deserving. I mean, all of it. I just think Wembanyama is, and you can't, obviously Jokic is going to start. I mean, he's a starter. I just think Wemby is number 2 for me. And so I was just like, if somebody wants to sub in AD or LeBron for Durant, or Durant and LeBron for AD, or however, whichever those guys you want to pick one, fine. This selection to me is a lot about what you just talked about. LeBron is forever. He's one of the best 2 or 3 players in the history of the game. He's the all-time leading scorer. I mean, the vote happened before this, but he had a ridiculous game last night. He's still playing at a high level. I get all of that, but it does feel like this is just a little bit of a lifetime achievement award this time around, just a little.
Oh, absolutely. We're at the Oscars right now, and Al Pacino is getting a Lifetime Achievement Award. And you know what, Bill? Like, as opposed to the Eastern Conference guards where we said you pick any of those 4, it doesn't really matter. I'm kind of okay with this. Yes, I think Wemby, if we're talking about it as a meritocracy, deserved it, and it's a little bit of a snub. But if we're talking about importance to the game, who people want to see, I think people want to see Wemby too, don't get me wrong. But he is LeBron, right? I mean, like, he's the greatest player of all time, and you want to see him start in an All-Star game. And if he didn't start, what would everybody be talking about? What would we be talking about? We'd be leading this show with, I can't believe LeBron's not starting.
we'd be leading the show with it because he would have complained about it and pouted about it, and it would be absolutely and I like LeBron, but it'd be like, what do I have to play perfectly to be an all-star? Just like I have to play perfectly to win with the Lakers. So yeah, maybe it's a mercy that he's the starter, so we don't have to deal with that silliness.
We should also point out while we're at it that Kevin Durant, in terms, he's not LeBron, but man, has he had an incredible career. This is his 15th selection, Bill. He joins Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, and Shaq at that level. Only LeBron, who has 21, Kareem, who has 19 selections, and Kobe, who had 18, have been selected to the All-Star game more than Kevin Durant. What a phenomenal, fantastic career he's had.
Outside of maybe Karl Malone, who never got a title, has any player this great ever been outshined relative to his greatness as much as KD has been, I think, by Steph and LeBron? Because we know how great he is. But the other day I was just diving into the numbers, to the career numbers, and there's an argument. I probably wouldn't make it, but there's an argument. He's a top 5 player, or certainly a top 10 player of all time. But he's the third wheel in the sort of legacy conversation, I think, in his era. To your point, the guy's amazing, and he can't catch a break because it's LeBron and Steph's time, and they outshine him again and again and again.
He just said the other day that he's not a typical 36-year-old, and he's absolutely right. The other night, because I live a full life, Bill, I was just like looking through box scores and career stats, and I was looking at Kevin Durant's, and his numbers this year are basically across the board exactly what his career averages are at 36. It's really remarkable that he's still putting up that kind of production. It's incredible. So those are the All-Star starters. We'll do reserves next week when we're back on CBS Sports Network. We're going to take a quick timeout, and then on the other side, we're halfway through the season. We're going to do mid-season report cards for the Western Conference. That's coming up. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. A reminder, you can get us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, leave a review, and then on Spotify, if you're listening there, if you look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about the show. All right, mid-season report card time, Bill, for the Western Conference. Did the Eastern Conference yesterday. You can check that out on the podcast feed. Western Conference time begins with the Dallas Mavericks, who injury-bitten, Bill. Still, though, above water 500, 24-21 puts them 7th in the Western Conference. No Luka for a while, no Kyrie for a while, and now they've lost Derek Lively to a foot fracture. But, Bill, they just beat Oklahoma City last night.
Look, I think so. I look like B is your grade. I think that's really, really generous. Because look, if we're gonna go with the grades thing, even if the dog eats your homework or some act of God happens, in this case injuries, they're still wildly underperforming. That is a nice win last night. But John, this was the team that made the finals last year. I think the expectation and the standard was top 2 or 3. I think you're being really generous with the old B. I'm assuming that's your grade.
What do you got?
I'm gonna go straight C+. Look. Okay. This is the NBA. This is like an honors class, right? There's no excuses. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter if you've been sick. You're responsible for your work. And the fact is the Mavs have been massively underwhelming. There's time to make up for it. There's a big final at the end of the year. If you can make a push and do well in the playoffs, we're willing to adjust your grade upward. It's not their fault, but it's been a really disappointing season for Dallas.
They could maybe make some extra credit, get that grade up a little bit. I just look at it as, without your best player for a large chunk of the season, and without Kyrie, your second best player for a big chunk of the season, the fact that they're above 500, kind of surprising to me. Moving on to the Denver Nuggets, Bill, who started out kind of like a little herky-jerky, now all of a sudden have really found their stride. They are solidly the 4th best team in the Western Conference. Bill, only a game back of Memphis for 3rd, and only 2.5 games back of my beloved Rockets for 2nd place, 4th in offensive rating, 16th in defensive rating. Middle of the pack could be a little bit better. But, Bill, over their last 15 games, the number 1 offense in the NBA.
Yeah, and that sort of mediocre middle-of-the-road defensive rating, it mirrors where they were at defensively the year they won an NBA championship. So even though they're not remarkably overpowering on paper, they're still more than capable, for all the obvious reasons they have the best player on earth, of winning the whole thing. Again, John, I think your grade's a little generous just by the standards that I would have for Denver. I still think that they're the second most likely team, as we have discussed, to be NBA champions after the Thunder. And by the way, you're on the Thunder bandwagon. I'm on the Thunder bandwagon. Everybody is. They've never done it. So it's not a guarantee they can. And if they can't, if it turns out they're still sort of learning how to win in the postseason, possible, not what I would bet on. Denver is a likely team to slip in there. You're right. They've been playing better lately. It's been such a slow start, and maybe I would give them a B+ in part because when you have to rely on Russell Westbrook and he's doing a great job and it's working, it makes me nervous. It just makes me nervous when Westbrook is an important piece on a basketball team. It does.
I thought that we were in accord that starter Russell Westbrook next to Joker is a real thing. I thought we agreed on that.
It's a sweet story. I want it to be a real story. But if I'm suddenly if I'm the guy you're just in the classroom, sure. But if I'm the professor, if I got to give grades out, I do not feel confident in this particular student. It makes me very, very nervous.
I'm clearly the professor all the kids are going to want to take because I'm a pretty easy grader here. And I want to believe in my students. I want to believe in Russell Westbrook. While we're on the Denver Nuggets, before we move along here, there had been a lot of momentum for SGA to be the MVP. Joker, once again, is like reminding everybody how good he was. He had an absolutely outrageous triple-double last night, a historic one.
Oh, my God.
He also hit a full court shot to get him into a triple-double.
Real chill, too.
Ridiculous.
Real laid back when he hit it.
I think that it's like pretty close. I'm not sure which way I'd go right now, but that momentum that SGA had gained, I think that Joker is slowing it down a little bit.
Yeah, look, I think if the Nuggets, it's hard to say, but if the Nuggets are second or third in the West when the season draws to a close, I think it's vastly different conversation than where it was even 3 or 4 weeks ago when they were trying to sort of play catch up. I'm with you. SGA is the leader in the clubhouse, but if Denver continues to play well, if they play with momentum at the end of the year, if they look like a contender, if they're, and this matters for me as a voter, if they're one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the West, I actually hope it doesn't happen because it's going to be impossible. It's going to be an impossible decision to make.
And you have a vote. We'll have to talk through that on the show. All right, moving along here to a team that's been pretty disappointing after a hot start. The Golden State Warriors, Bill. They're 22-22. They're 11th. They're outside of the play-in looking in. They started out 12-3. Since then, they're 10-19. They are 19th in offensive rating. That should not be possible when you have one of the best scorers of all time in Steph Curry. And it's been a good Steph Curry, Bill. This is the thing that I keep coming back to.
Yes.
How is the offense not good when Steph Curry has been good? That has never happened before with the Warriors. And then defensively, they're top 10 in defense. I don't understand the Warriors. I'm going to guess that you don't agree with my grade on this one either, and I was too generous.
No, I think we're aligned. I just think as the mean teacher here, I'm going to say to the student, you have a C-, but I expect you to be repeating next year because you're going to end up with an F. Because at this trajectory, you're going to fail. Like, congratulations, you did well on the early homework assignments. But you're right, and it's a bit of a mystery because every single year that this team has won an NBA championship, they have been really good defensively because we take for granted that they're great offensively, and they were, of course, as well in those runs that they had that were successful. But their offense is the thing that was always consistent. Whatever else was going on defensively, that would sometimes fluctuate. They're abysmal on the offensive end, and the 51-man rotation that we discussed at length turned out not to work. And the really good defense under Jerry Stackhouse that sort of brought in to do that hasn't been enough. And you're right, Steph's been amazing. And I think the biggest concern is the record you cited. They're not getting better. They're not going in the right direction. This isn't just a peak. I think this is where they are. I'm not sure there is a valley for this team going forward.
And a week ago, Steph Curry was asked about, hey, are you pushing for the team to make a big trade, a splashy trade at the deadline? And Steph, everybody picked apart his comments, but I'm paraphrasing here. He essentially said, I don't know that making a big move is a smart idea because we want to leave something for the future. And also, I don't think that we're that close. And he's right. They're outside of the play-in looking in right now. I do think, however, Bill, and you're a Kuminga guy, and I'm not really, I do think moving on for Kuminga and turning him into something would make sense because they didn't extend him over the offseason. What are we doing here with Kuminga?
Yeah, look, we've had this conversation a bunch. It's not Bob Myers anymore. It's Mike Dunleavy Jr. And he's also unproven in terms of whether he is capable of managing the very difficult mess and I think it is a mess that he's inherited. You're right, but what is the value of Kuminga? I mean, it feels like similarly maybe to the Jimmy Butler conversation. They're obviously different players. What are you going to get for Kuminga that's going to make you markedly better? I don't think that. I'm not sure that exists. I think they've managed themselves between a rock and a hard place. It's their own doing. They haven't developed him enough that they can utilize him properly, and they haven't developed him enough that they can trade him for whatever would be enough in return that the offense gets good enough that maybe they can make some kind of a push.
Yeah, they are kind of stuck here with him. I don't know. It's sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't with Kuminga. All right, moving on to this next team, Bill. I lobbied the producers to make this team the entire show. That was rejected, that proposal. But we're on to the Houston Rockets here. Bill, take a guess. What grade do you think I gave the Houston Rockets, who are third in defense? And by the way, Bill, guess who is now sneakily in the top 10 in offense as well? They're also ninth in offense. Oh, this is my team.
You love these guys. All right, look, so we teach this class together, but I'm just going to lay out here because this is the John Gonzalez Teacher's Pet Award, right? I don't know if they're bringing you apples or they're just telling you how good your lectures are. You love these guys. And by the way, you're absolutely right. An A-plus is absolutely what it is. This is a different standard, and we've had this talk as well in the pod a lot. I do not think they are remotely capable yet of winning an NBA championship, regardless of the fact they're top 10 in offensive and defensive rating. Those are markers that usually indicate that you're at that level, or at least capable of being at that level. The fact that they're one of the best teams in the Western Conference, I think they're too young, but that A-plus is real. And I think what's amazing about it is this is all gravy. This is all experience. Every playoff series they win this postseason, they should win at least one. It's going to build on a team that I think in a few years is going to be A minus, whatever, as a championship level contender with that kind of standard.
Yeah, they're way ahead of the curve, right? I mean, look, they have been, as we've mentioned, offensively challenged. They are 24th in field goal percentage and 27th in three-point percentage, but shooting the ball better over their last 15. They've moved up to 8th in three-point percentage. Their point differential is excellent. As I mentioned, top 10 in both offense and defense. And you and I have talked about this at length. Who's the best player on that team? It's probably Alperen Şengün. And then after that, you look around and go, I don't know, Amen Thompson some nights, most nights, some nights Fred VanVleet, some nights Jalen Green. They're just greater than the sum of their parts, and they've been a delight. And Ime Udoka, even though it's going to be Kenny Atkinson as the coach of the year, he should get some consideration. All right, moving on. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, if Cleveland falls back, Udoka could absolutely win that award. I'm just agreeing with you. He's been amazing.
Yeah, he's been really good. All right, Los Angeles Clippers. This is the plucky little engine that could. They're 6th in the Western Conference, Bill, 23rd in offensive rating, not good. 2nd in defensive rating. They're basically, I think of them as better Orlando Magic. They've got Kawhi Leonard back. Harden and Norm Powell have had good seasons. Ty Lue doesn't get enough credit, Bill.
I'm going to make it short and sweet. I'll even go B+, overachieving 6 games with Kawhi Leonard. They're not going to win a title, but they've done a really good job with what they have.
Yeah, solid team, solid B. Good season for the Los Angeles Clippers. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to continue with our Western Conference midseason grade awards with the other team in Los Angeles, the second team. The Clippers are the first team. We'll do the Lakers on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Continuing with our mid-season Western Conference report cards here, Bill. On to the Los Angeles Lakers, who had a huge win last night. You and I did the post-game show on CBS Sports HQ last night, throttled the Celtics.
Oh my God.
They have now climbed to 6 games over 500 for the first time this season. In terms of basketball, Bill, I have given the Lakers, who are challenged in a number of different areas, a solid B. I feel like you're not going to agree with that grade. If I was going to talk about what they're doing off the court in terms of rumblings about trade deadlines and guys not being happy and not having enough room for margin for error, I'd probably adjust that grade a little bit because the sound bites haven't been particularly good from the Lakers lately.
I don't know if you're way too easy on these teams or I'm way too hard on these teams, but for me, it is a C+. And I think the rumblings are part of it, John. If a team's 2 stars tell us publicly they're not good enough, I am going to believe them. If they tell me that they can't win an NBA championship as constructed, then I'm gonna follow suit. And you're right, that was a huge win yesterday, and you can't take anything away from the Lakers for just beating the holy hell out of the Celtics. Celtics had an off shooting night, which has been happening lately. They were coming off not only it's sort of a back-to-back as both games are in LA, but it was an overtime game with the Clippers the night before, so that takes a little bit out of you. None of it changes the fact that I think the Lakers are a mediocre team. The West is still bunched where the Lakers are concerned. Where they are now could be the high watermark for the season 3 or 4 or 5 weeks from now. I just don't think that they're that good. They're not that good defensively. I don't think they have enough offense. And I think LeBron and AD, especially LeBron, are a little it takes some guts to ask for more when you're the one that's helped construct the team, but they're not wrong. They don't have enough.
No, they're not wrong, and you're not wrong either. That's why I went B minus, because I think like their record is better than their numbers would indicate that they should be. So you mentioned they're not good defensively, 21st defensively, offensively 13th, slightly above average. Point differential. This is the one I always come back to. It's usually a really good leading indicator of how good your team is. They have a minus 1.4 point differential. That is the worst of the top 10 teams in the Western Conference. And they're one of only two teams with a negative point differential among the top 10. The Suns are the other one. So when you have JJ Redick saying we have very little margin for error, that's what he's talking about. When you have LeBron saying we have to play almost perfect the way the roster is constructed, that's what he's talking about. Then Shams had a report yesterday that said AD and LeBron are, quote, growing concerned with the Lakers' ability to make significant upgrades. And then on top of all of that, you have Anthony Davis coming out and saying they need another big. He doesn't want to play, this is the thing he's been saying for the last 10 years. He doesn't want to play center anymore. Yeah, so by the way, take that, Jackson Hayes and Christian Coloco. I don't know what they're going to do here.
I mean, there are no moves they can make. Again, this is a theme that's emerging for all these teams for different reasons. There's no move they can make that makes them an NBA contender. They do not have the flexibility or the pieces. So I saw this today on StatMuse, which is a great sort of NBA website. It does a bunch of NBA stats. Their top box score plus minus isn't everything, but their top box score plus minus player this year, do you know who it was? Is D'Angelo Russell. And he plays for the Brooklyn Nets. They didn't want him there. Yes, he's gone. So give me anyway. Yeah, I think C plus B minus is the right range. They're not bad, but they're not very good. They know that, and that's where the rumblings and the complaints come from.
See what they do at the trade deadline. All right, moving along here to the Memphis Grizzlies. I think it's a solid season for them, Bill. Almost top 5 in both offense and defense. I give them an A. They're 29-15, third in the Western Conference. Pretty close to being second in the Western Conference. It's basically Oklahoma City and then everybody else. But of the everybody else, the Grizzlies have been really good. Ja, when he's out there, he's missed some games because he's fragile at times. But when he's out there, he's really made that team go. Triple J is going to be an all-star. He's going to have some all-NBA consideration. He's been excellent. He's he will make all defense barring injury. This Taylor Jenkins has done a really good job with the Grizzlies.
Yeah, we're aligned. I think A is absolutely right. And I'm going to say something that I know to be true, but I'm leery because of their history of really Ja Morant being unavailable for a variety of reasons. But they're good enough. They're good enough to win an NBA championship. They're not durable and they're not necessarily reliable. And it's sort of fool me once, shame on you, fool me, twice, shame on me situation. But if you tell me that they're going to be healthy for the duration of the regular season and the postseason. And really, if you tell me Ja Morant can be out there and be Ja Morant and not go up for a dunk and fall on his side or hurt his ankle or whatever, John, they're more than capable of being that second team ahead of Denver or in that Denver range after the Thunder of being somebody that can make a really, really deep playoff run. We've sort of forgotten about them because they had a season that basically disappeared into the ether with Ja Morant's suspension and injury. But yeah, top 5 offensive and defensive rating. They're really, really deep. They play with great energy. The core of this team has been together for a long time. Those things are usually pretty important and significant. If you're going to make a run, I'm with you. Straight A, and I think that's a grade that they can even add on if things go really, really well the rest of the way.
Continuity and health coupled with, and this is something that you always point out, if you have a team that's hovering around top 5 in both offense and defense, they're going to be a really tough out. I think still Oklahoma City by a significant margin, but of those teams that could potentially give them a little bit of run, yeah, I think Memphis Grizzlies are at the top of that list. Moving on to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Weird year for them, Bill. So they make the trade for Karl Anthony Towns for fiduciary reasons. I get it. Julius Randle has been a clunky fit. Dante DiVincenzo just hurt his toe. He was coming on. They put him in the starting lineup. He looked good. Now he's out for a significant portion. They're 7th in defense. Their defense has gotten better this year as the year has gone along. They're still middle of the pack in offense, 14th. I gave them a C just because this is kind of like a worse version of what we saw from them last year, right? They were predicated on defense, number 1 defense last year. So they're worse in defense and they're about the same offensively.
Yeah, I think C. I don't actually think it's generous. I was going to be nice to poor Minnesota. I mean, to me, it's a D plus because John, my expectation was that they were going to take a major leap, and we know they moved on from Karl Anthony Towns in large part as a financial move. I mean, that wasn't a basketball decision. That was let's try to get our salary cap in a more flexible place in the years ahead, and we're going to build in and invest around Anthony Edwards. And so maybe their grade a year or 2 or 3 from now is really, really high. I think it's been shockingly underwhelming. It's been really disappointing. there is a window right now, or at least we thought there was, for this team to be one of the NBA championship contenders. And if you told me they lost in the first round of the playoffs, would not shock me at all. They've been basic. They've been mediocre. They've been disappointing, and it's self-inflicted.
Yeah, they're a playing team right now, right? And we were all waiting for Ant to take a massive leap forward. Okay, now Karl Anthony Towns plays in New York. This is solidly, it was your team anyway, but now it's super your team. And let's see you level up, like you said, in the Olympics when you said that you were the best player on the greatest team ever assembled. Now you're the best player on a team that's not the greatest team ever assembled and is middle of the pack, just basically a play-in team, but middle of the pack in most metrics that matter. So we'll see whether or not they can improve on that as the season goes forward. Moving on to the New Orleans Pelicans, Bill. I didn't even give them a grade. I just gave them the sad face emoji. This has been such a sad season.
What's the grade
everybody's been injured.
What's the grade you give somebody when they don't show up or they get mono for the year, right? Or their parents decide to go on, to move to another country for a while. It's like, did not, incomplete or not available. I mean, most of this team has been injured for the entirety of the season, and poor David Griffin, the GM, his big move is to move Brandon Ingram. That's what he wants to do. That guy's hurt and wants a bunch of money, so they can't even make the moves they want to make. They can't get the players on the floor they want to get on the floor. I mean, if you had to grade them, it would be a straight F, because yet again, every year I fall for this silliness. I thought they'd be a top 4 team. I thought they were constructed to be really good, but it's an incomplete. You didn't show up, right? You're on some vacation or you have mono. Better luck next year.
Yeah, incomplete, sad face emoji. Injuries this season too. Zion, Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado, CJ McCollum, Jordan Hawkins. I mean, I go on, like the guys who take the tickets at the arena. Like everybody has been injured. And it's a bummer because you and I both were pretty high on them coming into the season, where looking at this team when healthy, if healthy, I don't think I had them top 4, but like certainly a solid playoff team, not even a play-in team, and they just can't get right. Moving along to a team that has been right all season and is really living right, the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, full marks here, Bill. All the A+, it's an A+, but add an extra one on there just because they've been that good. SGA is an MVP candidate. They had that statement win over the Cavaliers last week. First in defensive rating by a million miles. It's not even close to the second team, the Clippers. That's how good they've been defensively. And then offensively, without Chet Holmgren, their second best player, and without Isaiah Hartenstein for big chunks, they've still been humming along. I think this is the team to beat in the NBA.
Do you want me to stretch this grade report card analogy till it breaks, John? Because I'm ready to do it.
Please,
ready
yes, run into the ground. Yeah, absolutely.
What's amazing is they have an A+++, and they've got the most important extra credit assignment coming in later. They don't even need it. That's Chet Holmgren, right? I mean, that's like, if it's a 0 to 100 scale, right, 100 being an A+, they've got a 50-point extra credit assignment that's just waiting in the wings to slip in there whenever they want to. They are, I think they're the best, most consistent team in the NBA. I would say I still think the Celtics can. I was thinking about this last night. I think we're going to get to May and there's going to be conversation where it's the Celtics. I think they're going to find their groove. Their shooting slump is not going to last. It's going to be fine. But in terms of like form this year, the Thunder have done everything right. Their front office, coaching, their team, their depth, how they execute. They are the perfect basketball team through the regular season this season so far.
Yeah, they really are. And the bench is so deep. They're first in net rating, although bench becomes less valuable once you get into the playoffs, but just the redundancy there where everybody that they bring in plays defense, and there's so many different ways they can beat you. And as I mentioned, MVP candidate and SGA, full marks for Oklahoma City. Another quick break, and then on the other side, we will continue with our mid-season Western Conference report cards. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. A reminder, you can also get us over on YouTube. You can find us over there at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and there's a little bell symbol. You click on that, you'll get notified when we go live. We're usually live Monday through Friday at noon Eastern, and we've been doing some more post-game shows at night, so be on the lookout for that. Phoenix Suns, Bill. What a weird year. I gave them a C-. They're 10th. They're barely a play-in team.
I'm with you on C-. This is like me in math. I love the effort. They're just really bad at what they do. This doesn't come naturally. That doesn't come naturally to the owner. Doesn't come naturally to these players outside of Kevin Durant. Even Devin Booker's been having an off season. So I think C- is the right grade for a team that they've tried. They work hard. They just handcuff themselves, and they are what they are, which is pretty mediocre.
All right, so they go and get Nick Richards. Fine. They don't like Yusuf Nurkic. Whatever. That's, I think, like just shuffling the chairs around on the deck. But there's been a lot of rumors about them setting themselves up for Jimmy Butler. Now, they made a trade with Utah the other day where they gave the Jazz a 2031 first round pick unprotected for three pretty marginal picks. In 2025, 2027, and 2029, they got back the least favorable first round picks between Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah. That probably for those years is going to be in the 20s somewhere, right? I don't know if it's going to be enough to pry Jimmy Butler away. And by the way, you still got to convince Brad Beal to waive his no trade clause. But putting all that aside for a second, they kind of signaled to us that this is what they were going to do because they don't have control of their draft basically forever. Houston has it. And what was it? 9 months ago, Matt Ishbia and James Jones talked about this very thing.
And like I said, if fans like to look in the future and say, hey, I really like that 2031 draft pick because maybe that seventh grader is going to be really good and we're going to draft him and one day he's going to be a player. Like, you ain't going to like the Phoenix Suns because we're going to say draft picks are to get great players.
I said it before. We're not thinking about the seventh grader in 2031. We're talking about elite players who want to win, saying, how can we win today? How can we win tomorrow? How can we win the next 12 months? Devin's not thinking about 2031. Kevin's not thinking about 2031.
Draft picks overrated, Bill.
Do you remember when James Jones was a good GM? He looks like he's been taken hostage in that. I feel so bad for. He doesn't believe a word that he's saying. You're right. They told us who they were, as Bill Parcells would say, and we just needed to listen. And by the way, to Matt Ishbia, who I don't know, but I know people close to him, and I guess they like that. They like him. No one likes the Suns now. I mean, what was his quote? Like, if you don't like this, you're not going to like the Suns. No one likes the Suns, and they're going to like them less because if this was working, if you were trading even a chance at 2 or 3 titles, let's say they made a finals and came close a couple of times and didn't win. Okay, you put your money in the middle of the table. You had good odds. You didn't win. That's the deal. They're not going to sniff the conference finals. They're not remotely a title contender. And to the Jimmy Butler trade, you got to get Bradley Beal to waive a no-trade clause that he shouldn't have and he shouldn't be a Sun in the first place. The Heat think they maybe can get a deal done, but they keep telling me it's day-to-day because for all the reasons we know, there's not that much value. They have to have 3 or 4 teams, 1 or 2 other teams to probably facilitate that trade. I don't see how Phoenix wins now or improves later, and now they're giving away 2031. It is going to be bleak in that city for a long time in terms of basketball.
It's bleak. Brad Beal, by the way, owed roughly $111 million over the next 2 years. So that sounds like something people will want. Let's move along here to the Portland Trail Blazers. We don't need to belabor this. I guess it depends on the eye of the beholder here. They're 16-28, 13th in the Western Conference. It's either a D because they haven't been good or a B because they've been bad enough.
I'll give them a D. I don't think they're well run. Okay. I don't think they have a core that it's a straight D for me because outside of an amazing draft opportunity, they don't look like a team like some bad teams in the past that are trending in a good direction.
Moving along to a team that has had some moments this season where you thought, okay, this is not good. The wheels are coming off. And then all of a sudden they'll have flashes. The Sacramento Kings, 23-21. They've won 8 of their last 10, although they lost last night. 7th in offensive rating, 14th in defensive rating. They fired Mike Brown in the car over the phone on his way to the airport, Bill. In comes Doug Christie. I thought, what are you doing, Vivek? And as it turns out, Doug Christie's been okay. Sacramento Kings have looked okay. Solid B for me.
You did a smiley face as a grade. Can I do a shrugging my shoulders emoji? Is that because I don't know. You're right. Since Mike Brown went away, they've been really good and interesting. So to me, it's grade withheld until I get more information.
Moving along to the San Antonio Spurs. This is a team that you said was going to be a surprise this season, and I think they have been. They're underwater with their record. They're 20-22, so they're 12th, but solidly middle of the pack in offensive and defensive rating, basically league average there. Wemby has taken a step forward, going to be an all-star, going to get all-NBA consideration, going to be DPOY. They have an idea of what they want to be. I think this organization is ahead of the curve. I like what they've done. Solid B.
I want to go A or A minus so badly like you do with Houston, but I'll go B plus. Overachieving, come back to the pack a little bit, but they're capable of making the play-in, and if they do that, it's an A season for them.
Yeah, they're right on the fringe. They look like they were
Right.
going to make the play in there for a second, and they've slipped a little bit recently, although they're in France, so they picked up a win against the Pacers. Maybe they'll get another one before they come back to America. Last one in the Western Conference as we wrap up our midseason report card. The Utah Jazz. Here again, it's either an F or an A from me. They've been terrible, but they wanted to be terrible, so I guess it's an A because they're tanking right.
Yeah, I'll go A. And by the way, that trade they made with the Suns, right? I mean, this season's about sort of making the right moves and not panicking in the moves you make. I'll go straight A. Danny Ainge, the master, not going to doubt him at all.
If you're Danny Ainge and the Suns come to you and say, hey, by the way, we'll take 3 of your garbage picks that you want to get off of for a 2031 pick that we don't value, but you definitely will because you know that the Suns are about to crater, you are thanking them and you're taking everybody out to dinner afterwards. You're excited about it. All right, one more break, and then on the other side, we will wrap up the show with Team of the Night. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc, wrapping up the show with our Team of the Night leaderboard. You see our selections there as the season goes along. Some of them are tongue-in-cheek. Sometimes we like to have a little bit of fun with them. Bill, I think you and I today are doing genuine ones, yeah?
Yes. These are mine is earnest. Finally, I think I'm on a streak of 9 in a row that are sarcastic. Give me the Denver Nuggets. They're getting right. Jokic had was a 35, 22, 17 triple-double, which is absolutely
ridiculous.
absurd. And even though I've thrown shade on Russell Westbrook in this show today, he's feeling all the love from the big guy. And as you noted, Jokic had the three-quarters court shot that he hit at the buzzer and then just was like, that's cool. It's chill. It's just another day playing basketball. That was amazing.
He shrugged, and he was asked about it afterwards, and he goes, yeah, I knew it was going in. And it was like real deadpan. And that's why, like, I'm buying all the Nuggets stock right now. He has been so good. That team has really started to figure it out. Jamal Murray, by the way, we were really down on him earlier in the season, starting to play like Jamal Murray again, which is huge for them.
And by the way, they only need him to play the Jamal Murray they need him to play in the playoffs. I mean, that's the reality, or maybe a little bit in the regular season. So if he sort of trends in the right direction now, and he's that guy in mid-April, watch out.
Just that 2-man game between him and Joker unlocks so much stuff. For me, I'm going to go with the Lakers. We mentioned all the long-term problems that they've got. They've got some issues to address at the trade deadline. I'm just talking about last night. Last night was really good. At one point, they had their biggest margin of the entire season, and the Celtics were at their biggest deficit. So they are now 6 games over 500. Look, you got to play with the players that you got, and they had a big win over a rival during rivalry week. You mentioned, by the way, that the Celtics, this is something I keep flagging, that you think the Celtics are going to be okay. I just want to point out, the Celtics, since starting 21-5, this slump, they're now 10-9 over their last 19. That's a quarter of the season. I'm starting to get a little concerned about the Celtics.
I just want to save this clip, and it's reasonable. When the Celtics are up 2-0 in the conference finals against the Cavs and going back to Boston, that this was, like Thanos, this was inevitable. They're inevitable.
I was talking to some of my Boston friends about this, and they are really actually very concerned about this. And I think, like you, that eventually the shots are going to start falling. But 10-9, that's like a big chunk of the season. It's not nothing. That's all I'm saying. It's not nothing.
You're right. But remember, I mean, yes. I also covered a Heat team that started 10-9 LeBron's first year, and the sky was falling. They made the NBA Finals and should have beat Dallas. So you're right. I just think they're so talented it'll work out.
Something to keep our eye on. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We're going to be back at it on Monday, live on YouTube at 12 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. Also, be sure to go and check out everything that Bill writes over at CBSSports.com and our excellent CBSSports.com NBA team. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Reiter, I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great weekend.